There are quite a few people, including some Christians themselves, who seem to think it's unsuitable to talk about anti-Christian hate crimes in the West before when believers are being slaughtered in Nigeria, disappearing in North Korea, or living under constant fear and contempt in Pakistan. Though Paris is indeed no Pyongyang, people should be able to discuss the existence of anti-Christian sentiment regardless of where it exists. It so happens that Europe is seeing a rising number of hate crimes directed against Christianity, according to a recent report from the Observatory on Intolerance and Discrimination Against Christians in Europe. For all of my life living in the UK, I grew up with open discussion and free speech, said Paul James Griffiths, director of the Christian Heritage Edinburgh. From about 2013, things began to change. Before then, people would generally express different opinions in a free society. James Griffith added that for the last decade plus, the currents against Christianity and traditional family values, as well as against our democratic culture, have gone from being a stream to being a river. Behind the changing currents, he sees two main sources: radical Muslims and people with far-left politics. Both groups seem to use each other to advance their cause. He said, adding that the far left champions diversity except for Christianity and traditional values based on this faith. Meanwhile, radical Muslims laugh behind the backs of the far left while they use diversity ideals to gain power in Europe. An example of this growing political power surfaced in December 2023 with the formation of the Muslim Vote UK, which seeks to exert pressure on politicians. James Griffiths fears that the UK might eventually see the prohibition of open discussion and critique of Islam, Muhammad and the Quran. For European Christianity, it can be different to determine whether the target threat comes from adherence to an anti-Christian belief system or from the many Europeans with a godless hatred, homegrown in the West and now in full bloom. Both forms of persecution are growing in the UK, James Griffith said. My wife is German, and she says that their culture is trying to hold on to the Christian way of doing things more strongly than we are doing in the UK. However, this is now rapidly changing. One of the most striking statistics in the recent OIDAC report involves Germany, where hate crimes against Christians reportedly doubled from 2022 to 2023. Along with this sharp rise in the reality that many anti-Christian hate crimes do not make it into official statistics, and Anja Hoffmann, Executive Director of OIDAC in Europe. Additionally, many European countries do not keep statistics regarding anti-Christian incidents. We are increasingly concerned about the overall situation in Europe, Hoffmann said, in particular restrictions on religious freedom and discrimination against Christians, leading to growing self-censorship among Christians. More and more young Christians have become very cautious about whether and when to talk about their faith in public. On a similar note, James Griffiths remarked that increasingly we are seeing people being persecuted and losing their jobs for their stand for traditional Christian values. This type of discrimination, as Hoffman pointed out, tends to come from radical secularist views that lead to intolerance of religious beliefs or worldviews. However, anti-Christian hate crimes can have a variety of motives. These include radical Muslim hostility, along with motives from persons with far-left or far-right politics. Some perpetrators simply have a personal hatred of Christianity or religion in general, which is directed against church buildings, Hoffman said. Most cases recorded by OIDAC involves perpetrators and motives that remain unknown, and even among attacks with an established radical Islamic motive, and perpetrators are often European natives, not migrants. Though attacks in Europe by migrant perpetrators are indeed noteworthy, much of the continent's underlying anti-Christian hostility comes from the European themselves, a considerable number of whom occupy positions of influence. As a result, Christians can feel compelled to hide their beliefs and views in the workplace and at a university. In order to counter this trend and safeguard religious freedom, including the freedom to express religious views in public, we need to raise awareness of legislation and social trends that have a negative impact on religious freedom, Hoffman said. Though Christians in Europe encounter far less physical danger than believers in many other parts of the world, the continent is still witnessing an increase in incidents of anti-Christian hostility, and this hostility can come from multiple sources. I hope and pray for a Christian revival in Reformation again in Europe as more and more people see what is going on, James Griffiths said. However, the trend appears to be heading towards anti-Jewish and anti-Christian movements.